the free agent period, the Sabres. Luke Fox from Sportsnet at Luke Fox Jukebox, one of the best Twitter names. Luke, welcome back.
Yeah, happy to be here. Busy time for NHL news. So it feels like every hour or so there's some little bit of tidbit that comes out, whether it's a rumor or a signing or a trade. It's good time, fun time to be a hockey fan.
And we certainly appreciate you finding time for us, considering all of that, Luke. What's your read on what the Sabres did before the draft? Let's start there with the Peterka trade with Utah, and then we can go from there into what their offseason might end up looking like.
Sure. Generally you say whoever got the best player in the trade probably won the trade, and I think Peterka was the best name in the deal, so you might want to give it to Utah, but I would say give it a little bit of time here. The Sabres were in a position where the player didn't want to sign long-term. He's coming up as an RFA, and management has to make a decision. They have to do some smart asset management, and if they don't think they can get the player at a reasonable rate, or the player is not going to be happy, or they don't envision him being part of the core long-term, then you try to get the best return possible. And I thought they did that. They got two pieces. I think there's a lot of people who follow the Eastern Conference that don't stay up and watch a lot of Michael Kesselring, but a lot of people are high on this defenseman. So, let's let this play out a little bit. I think he could develop into a pretty strong player. Adams and Kekalainen are betting that his best years are still ahead of him. Mm-hmm. And, he's a good player. He might be the nicest piece over the long term. They might say, you know what, this wasn't so bad after all. But Utah obviously wants to get more scoring, wants to make a bit of a splash this season with the new name, new owner, new market. So they're being aggressive. But I want to let this one breathe a little bit before we say that the Sabres lost this deal. I think it was not bad asset management considering they were pinned into a bit of a corner.
Yeah, respectfully, with all that in mind, the possibility that the players they got could turn out, that's always there. It's sort of, I don't want to say this like personally, Luke, you lose me at, well, if the player didn't want to stay. And it's not because you're wrong. It's just because that is kind of a lot of Sabres life, like how they get to a place, or in this case got to a place with Peterka where he would just have wanted at such a young age and had enough leverage, I guess, to pull it off. However, he must have been pretty convincing that he didn't want to be around. So as you surely know, there's been a lot of that with the Sabres, and I don't know, I guess that's still happening, right?
It is still happening because that trade was that a week
Wednesday.
ago?
Yeah, not even. Right.
So the trick is to build a culture of winning where players aren't asking out. You want to get to a point, and it's not going to happen overnight. With you're having what happened in Florida. Like there was a point in time when no one wanted to be a Panther. It wasn't exciting to go play hockey down there. But they got to the point now where Aaron Ekblad just less than an hour ago, took a massive discount. He probably could have made $8 million on the open market, and he's staying for, I think it's 6.1. That's where you want to get to. But, baby steps, and then you have to make decisions along the way. But, you make a good point. There is certainly a trend of guys flexing their leverage to get out, and they're in a tough spot. So, let's see what happens in free agency, how this all settles out, what happens with Bowen Byram. That I think feels like the next shoe to fall here. Like, do they keep him and convince him to stay, or, do the trade rumors actually come to fruition, and is he the next one out?
Yeah, that's the situation. I did not want to see them divest themselves of Peterka. I understand the position they were in. I was tempted, Luke, to say maybe, we've got you for 4 more years. Like, I'm sorry you don't like it here, but we're gonna turn this around, and you're gonna help us do it. And so, like, here's your qualifying offer, or here's a bridge, or whatever it is. But they didn't do that. Byram, I think, makes sense to move on from because they've already got kingpins on the blue line. I like the pieces they got in the trade, Kesselring and Josh Doan. I almost called him Shane, his dad. But I need to turn Byram into something to, if not directly replace what Peterka gave them scoring-wise, at least be a part of what's going to help, subsidize their scoring there, because I'm having a hard time listening to the GM talk about Zach Benson and his 28 points and Jack Quinn coming off an injury lost really 2 years, being the answers there. So if they can turn Byram into something, then the Utah trade with Peterka, to me, looks a lot better, because I like the pieces in a vacuum, but I just don't think they have the scoring to replace Peterka without making another move.
No, they don't. They absolutely do need more offense. And also, they went out and got Connor Timmins out of Pittsburgh, and it's like, wait a sec, how many NHL level defensemen do you need? So it does feel like something could happen there. There was whispers that Romanov might get traded, and he just re-signed on Long Island. So the defense market right now, especially I just mentioned Ekblad coming up the board. There aren't many out there available, whether it's trade or free agency. So it probably is a pretty good time to be willing to trade a defenseman who's still in his prime age, who can log top 4 minutes, no problem. So, this is if they do follow through it and trade Byram, you expect a nice return. And I think the Peterka trade shows you that Adams isn't just looking for futures at this point. He wants guys who can play now, so that, trading for a forward who can put the puck in the net would make a lot of sense. And there's a lot of moving pieces right now. Maybe teams that want to get a defenseman in free agency strike out tomorrow, and then Byram's value goes even higher on the trade market, because teams are left like, well, we need a top 4D. We don't have one. We missed one in free agency. We got to trade one. Buffalo has one of the best ones available. So maybe it might even be smart to play this out a little bit.
With Luke Fox of Sportsnet, Mike Schopp and the Bulldog here, WGR. I wonder, Luke, and I'm not sure this is a question Adams would take, but the idea, like getting pieces for the now, that doesn't surprise me. And that's how he's talked for a while now here, with enough, my words, enough already with the futures, right? 14 years without a playoff spot is pretty, tough stuff. So I just wonder, in a vacuum, if he would be different with this roster. Do you feel like it's the right course of action to get pieces for the present when you were just 26th? Was it even that high? 26th, I think it was, in the league in points. Because normally, they're young enough and they're down far enough where you might just being young is kind of your purpose right now. But the Sabres are acting like they can't afford that, given their history, and I'm not sure I blame them.
No, I think you make a good point. In a vacuum, you might take a step back, especially considering the 26th draft class led by Gavin McKenna, as regarded by amateur scouts as more enticing than the 25 draft class that just got picked over the weekend. So it's a really interesting time in the league, because outside of the Pittsburgh Penguins, there aren't pretty much any teams that are trying to get worse right now. Maybe the Calgary Flames, especially if they trade Rasmus Anderson, maybe they're willing to take a little bit of a step back. But even the teams like San Jose and Chicago, Anaheim, the teams that had been tanking are ready to take a step forward. Pretty much all the good teams, the playoff teams, none of them want to take a step back. They feel like they just want to keep going. So there aren't many teams that find themselves in tank mode. So, but on the flip side, I do understand that you need to get some veterans in there. You need some leadership and some maturity in that room. It's such a young room. And, on paper, you have a lot of raw talent, but you have to start building a culture. It's a really tough situation for the front office to be in. You're trying to make it work, but this is still, unfortunately, a multi-year project. I wonder what happens if Buffalo gets off to a poor start if they just look at that draft class in 26 and say, you know what, we didn't want to do this, but maybe we do have to take, would lay off the gas and, heaven forbid, go a 15th year missing the playoffs.
Heaven forbid, all of it. I mean, I'm sort of like a little bit excited, but also...
my boy's tingling over here, Luke.
The 26th draft. Why wait? Let's go. The draft is our life.
Well, one other piece that they've got maybe a decision to make, and this is a tough area because goaltending is just, good ones are very rarely available, and even good ones are, throw a dart, like on a given year, a given offseason, like who knows? Gibson finally got traded to Detroit. We'll see if that works out because he's been kind of at the top of that list of, accomplished goalies who might get moved for many years now, and we'll see what kind of player he still is when we get there. The Sabres have got Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen 1 year in on a contract extension that did not go smoothly, and we're still sort of waiting for Devin Levi to show that he's ready to hit the beach. And I'm not sure that happens. It could happen this fall, but I'm not confident. So, what do you do there? Is it Jake Allen time? I mean, what do you think you want to do in goal if you're Buffalo?
Yeah, Jake Allen's probably the top name on the list just because, you know what you're getting in him. Is he a number one? No, but he's a solid number two in this league, and the goalie market is completely ravaged right now. He's the one that the GMs are most talking about in free agency. New Jersey has an inclination to keep him, but his price point, I had heard he might be asking for as much as $5. For him to actually get $5, I think would be surprising. I think you can get him for less than that. You can get him short term because he is getting a little bit older. He's not going to. I don't think he would need a great commitment in terms of term, maybe 2 years. But you could do worse than him. He's a solid goalie. He's the kind of goalie that could push UPL and force Levi to earn his way up. Levi, I think he's RFA, right? Like he doesn't even have a contract.
Right.
Yet. They still need to negotiate with him. And maybe that gives you some leverage in the negotiations too. If you bring in a solid guy, I going in with a tandem of just Levi and UPL, I don't like that. So, I think it would be wise to get some more stability there and get a veteran in there. And Jake Allen is, by all accounts, is a good teammate too. He could help kind of groom the young guys and give them some pointers. So the fact that Detroit's taken itself out of the goalie market, that's probably your best bet. And the Sabres do have cap space, so maybe they can get something done there.
With Luke Fox, the biggest name there is to talk about, I would say, is probably Mitch Marner. And it seems to many, apparently, that his going to Vegas is a done deal, maybe even surreptitiously a done deal. It's not actually July 1st yet. What's your expectation there?
Yeah, my expectation is that he's going to be a Golden Knight. We're just waiting now to see if the Leafs can swing a trade in terms of like a sign-in trade to potentially for the Knights to get 8 years and have Vegas jump the market here. Because if he actually hits the open market, then you'd for sure have teams like LA and Anaheim and Carolina poking around, maybe Utah. We talked about them wanting to make a splash, but all signs point to Vegas as the landing spot. The big question mark is, can Brad Treliving in Toronto get anything for Marner's rights? If they want to take his total value of his next contract, spread it over 8 years, only the team that owns his rights can do that. Once you get to noon tomorrow, then the most a team on the open market can offer is 7 years. And Vegas is always pressed right up against the cap, so anything they can save there would help them. The guy that Treliving wants is Nick Waugh. Bottom six center. The Leafs need center depth. He's signed for 2 more years at $3 million, and so the Leafs could slide him into their roster right away. They want help right now, so that's what they're aiming for. And the big question is, can they get it done? does Vegas even care to get it done? Or they say, we're not giving away an asset when we feel confident Marner will sign with us at noon anyway. So that's the struggle that's going on right now in between Toronto and Vegas.
Is there what do you make of the smoke around tampering? Because that's made the rounds in the last 24 hours or so, that maybe Vegas, that Toronto might have a leg to stand on there, charging them with tampering.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. I'm a little bit skeptical that it actually goes down that way. It feels like it might just be a threat, because I think if the league investigates or charges Vegas with tampering, and we do know that, the team did have interest in Marner dating all the way back to last summer. They engaged in conversations. Toronto was kind of keen on getting Shea Theodore. Vegas ultimately re-signed Theodore, and Marner stayed put. Toronto tried to trade him a couple times. He wouldn't waive his no move as per his right. So the conversations between the two teams go far back. But what Vegas is not allowed to do is talk to Marner directly. So if the league were to open up a file and investigate that and go deep and tick off the Golden Knights by doing that, then you open a big can of worms, because there is a lot of nudge, nudge, wink, wink conversations that go on in the league. And if I'm the Vegas Golden Knights and I get, investigated for tampering in this case, I'm going to cause a huge stink and point in the direction of 31 other clubs that might be doing a little bit of, doing some stuff that falls in the gray area. Yeah. And does the league really want all the conversation this summer to be around, the kind of backdoor suggestions about players? I wonder if they really want to open this up.
Yeah.
Is there something big for Toronto? I mean, I know they kept Nyes, which I thought about halfway through this year, if Marner's going to end up going, and it was looking like he was, that Nyes is like the new member of the core group there. He really just has emerged. So, maybe, bigger and better still to come from him. But we're talking about the Sabres replacing Peterka's offense. Is there a move to replace Marner's offense or all-around play, or do you think it'll just be what they've got coming?
Well, you do it by committee. So, this afternoon they traded for Matthias Michelli out of Utah. He's coming off a really down year, but he has hit the 50-point mark in the past. So they gave up a conditional third for him. They're hoping maybe he can fill a second-line role, get back to a 50-point pace. But he can't defend like Marner. Marner was up for the Selke one year. He's on the first penalty-killing unit. So they're going to have to find someone to help Marner's void as a defensive forward. That's where they're going to gun hard at Brad Marchand if he hits the open market. There's whispers that the Leafs could offer him as much as 8 times 4, which is a really big bag of cash to hand a 37-year-old. But the UFA market is so thin, and Marchand is that rare two-way forward who also brings leadership and playoff pedigree, and he rises to the big moments, that they're willing to do that. But basically, you can't replace a 100-point player in this climate. So you're just trying to patch it up. And to be quite honest, the Leafs won the division in the regular season, and they're going to be really hard-pressed to repeat. Florida hasn't really lost a step. Tampa has no interest in laying off the gas. And then you have teams like Montreal that looks to be improving. Ottawa is on the rise. So it's going to be very difficult for them to even maintain their level while losing Mark.
Is that Marchand idea $8 million for 4 years or $4 million for 8 years?
Isn't that like? What do you guys think of that? It seems and I love what Marchand brings, but that seems really high for a guy who's 37.
Yeah, both ends of it seem really high, but the term and the money.
Yeah.
But why not? I guess
Right.
I thought we were venturing into Bobby Bonilla territory. If it were 8 years, we're might as well.
Years.
Yeah, let's just put the whole thing off. $1 million a year for 30, whatever it takes. I don't know.